going strong. And though the wicked may fight me down, I get stronger and stronger. I'm always around. I am rooted and ground for justice, still going strong. But I know one day you'll realize it's the mercies of God that has kept us alive. We will sing a new song for justice, and we will go through.
WEFM, the new fresh sound.
WhatsApp us or call us at 457-9997. Activated Mornings on WEFM 99.9 is on now.
Alrighty, so time in SVG, it is 8:50 and it's time for us to hear commentary from Doc this morning. Doc, officially, good morning to you.
Good morning to you. You know, I really, as a matter of responsibility, I should really continue a little from life, but I'll probably have to look to deal with this a little more on Wednesday night, you know, and come back in, but also to get a little bit more solid information exactly what's happened before I speak and speak in an authoritative manner on the subject of these arrests and what actually happened. But instead, I want to talk a little bit more about the global financial crisis and how it impacts on St. Vincent, how it impacts on our citizens. And I remember, as you recall, in September 2008, in the United States, they had the collapse of Lehman Brothers. And we had the official start of what was called a financial crisis. And I was in New York for Independence 2009, speaking to a Vincentian audience. And on one hand, I wrestled with trying to reassure them that in St. Vincent, everything was going to be all right. That even though it says that when America sneezes, we catch a cold, that we had not seen that yet. It was not but 3-4 months later that we saw the financial crisis, the impacts of it affect the Caribbean and affect the Caribbean for 3-4 years running, where you had GDP in some countries falling 25%, some less, and so forth. And then during that time, if you recall, there was a discussion of what we call the pro-cyclical and counter-cyclical policies. People will more remember the term counter-cyclical policies. And I always wonder, a lot of people don't always understand these economic terms and so forth, and how they can be put into simple terms. And clearly, with the war in Iran and the Middle East right now, what should we in the Caribbean brace for? Do we wait to see if it would affect us in 6 months or a year? You know, or are there things that we should be braced about and put in place now to really look at that? And that's the subject of my, well, what would be my short commentary this morning, because pro-cyclical and counter-cyclical variables fluctuate in a way that either positively or negatively affect the whole country or global business cycle, and affect this subject called GDP, the gross domestic product. We know if GDP drops, you see losses of jobs. If you see GDP increases, you know, it basically, jobs are created. If it stayed, you must, if you have GDP less than 1%, you see loss of jobs. If you see GDP over, you might start seeing, if it stays the same, there's no change. So counter-cyclical policies, as you're going to hear, I'm sure, are government and central bank actions designed to stabilize the economy by moving against what's happening in the business cycle, what's moving against the trends in the economy, and to still stimulate growth during recessions. They often focus on something like lowering interest rate, increasing spending, and cooling expansion during boom, by rising rates, reduce spending, and so forth. Now, these measures aim to reduce the volatility in unemployment and employment, inflation, and your production output. And it's difficult to talk about this without talking about some of these terms, right? And simplifying them, because these are the real terms we use. And so with what we call counter-cyclical policy, and trying to put it in a simple term, there is what we call fiscal policy. During downturns, government may increase spending on infrastructure or offer tax cuts to boost demand. Conversely, they may increase taxes or cut spending to prevent the economy from overheating during times of booms. This may not necessarily be that time. Now, monetary policy, central banks lower interest rates to encourage borrowing and spending during recessions. They raise rates to slow down inflation during periods of rapid growth. And then, there are features what we call automatic stabilizers. I'm going to go to that, and then whatever goals one. So we say that there are 4 types of monetary policies, everybody. And you're going to hear a lot more. Exchange rate. Now, St. Vincent and the Eastern Caribbean, we are linked through our East Caribbean Central Bank to the US dollar. And how the US dollar goes, we go. Most of our reserve are linked and are in US currency. You've been seeing around the world, Canada, a number of countries, trying to move away from being dollar dependent. What's going to be the impact? Monetary targeting, inflation targeting, other policies. You're going to be hearing a little bit more about this because there are a number of things that are going to take place. Petrol and diesel prices will start to increase. You will see gas prices for cooking and another where it's used will also see an increase. Already in the UK, it's doubled. You understand? You will see things like fertilizer that uses those type of commodities that those prices will also increase. And you will see inflation in relation to food and other things that may come in. Now, sadly, there's also going to be gouging, where certain companies take the opportunity. They don't know what's going to happen, so they're going to increase prices just in case. They have old stock, they have old commodities, but the prices will increase. So the big issue of my is that central banks and governments will take certain action. But what about you as the individual? What do you need to know in terms of financial education, in terms of economic education, basic economic education, so that you could prepare? Do you over prepare and we get into panic and so forth? Or do you basically do from the experience of the financial crisis, from the experience of previous oil crisis? What should we do now rather than waiting for 8 months, a year from now, when the sneeze may well cause pneumonia and certain other problems? And we have to look at our food consumption and the price, the cost of food. We have to look at oil and storage and how we actually produce and things like that. And we have to look at our spending habits. Although restaurants and so forth, you want to see the dollar circulate, what should people do? I'm not being prescriptive here, but I think that this is a serious subject in which public education on economics, and in addition, what governments and central banks will do that need to stabilize economies. We have to have some further discussion from the experts as regards what is the best approach here in a place called St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Okay. You didn't talk about energy consumption, though.
Well, energy in relation to oil, and you're right in terms of your electricity, in terms of your outside lights. You want your outside lights off because on because Maka, somebody come and thief. Is it a deterrent, or is it just to show up the color your house is painted in? You make it look nice. All these things, there's a whole list of things that really need. So my discussion today isn't meant to be prescriptive. It's to say that we need this public discussion, not to create panic, but to really start to examine it based on the past and what the predictions are that could happen. How do we approach this so people are not surprised by certain things taking place that will affect their pocket? Yeah. Because there's no doubt that fuel surcharge is likely to increase. And I put that on the whole broad package of oil and gas and so forth in that because these things will affect us.
Fuel surcharge, what you pay at the pump at the gas station is also going to go up. So yes, it's a host of things, but I do agree with you because given what has happened in the Middle East and what is currently happening in terms of that's the point of the, what do you call it, Strait of Hormuz? Right, Hormuz. That word. What is happening there, and the cost for per barrel for oil has gone up. We are going to be affected by it. But as you said, I know that you said you didn't want to be prescriptive, but I think that education has to go out there in terms of how the common person needs to find a way all now to start to mitigate those effects, those spill-off effects that we're going to meet, right? Yes, I guess you didn't want to have to lay them out one by one, but I'm looking, and the reason why I brought up the energy consumption is that we know that it is going to affect us directly in our pockets when it comes to that VINLEC bill, right? Yeah. And VINLEC is going to get a serious cussing because persons may not understand the trickle-down effect, right? Yeah. So simple things like telling persons to conserve more, or where possible, you get, let's say, devices that might be solar powered, right? The little things that you tend to do when you are looking at, when we go through a natural disaster, maybe even though we are not in the context of a natural disaster at this point in time, that you use some of these same techniques so that you're able to conserve. In the context of energy consumption, you're able to mitigate the expenses that you might be facing. Well, I shouldn't say if it goes up, when it goes up.
And the release, I think the point I'm trying to make, because the individual things, you'd be surprised that ripple effect of what it affects and so forth. And electricity prices will probably one of the first things. Luckily at Lomans, I think now they have about 27 or a number of days of storage. We used to have 3 days of oil storage, but now we have, I don't know at what level those tanks are full. But what has to be emphasized, on one hand, if you overdo it, there are certain businesses, restaurants and so forth and things like that, that not only do they require electricity, but they need you to have the confidence to keep coming. If if policy and the thinking is, boy, let me hold back on everything, let me shut down, let me not go out, let me not, there's no parties, no events, the upcoming carnival and so forth that will take place. What will be the impact on that, on people traveling, on people that, so on one hand, you see a ripple downward effect. And then on the other hand, it can be more protective of the individual. So the balancing of all this is something. But I like what you said, and what is being said, that each individual should be aware of the possibilities and make their choice as regard an informed choice of how they're going to approach it and what may be the best methods of approaching it. That's where the public education, I didn't think this short program would be able to do so in any kind of detail. And I'm hoping that in the various programs that come up and through various other individuals that we start a discussion on it. Taxing, we're taxing down the runway. We need to really take off looking at this before, everything shuts down.
Yeah, but you know what? As you're talking there, I think the pandemic sort of gave us a heads up, even from the context of a business, of how to become creative, right? In order for you to still try to be in business, maybe not necessarily in the same context of your original business plan idea, but in how to be creative. So let's say persons are no longer able to, let's say, go into the restaurant because you're going to have to pay for gas, right?
Yeah.
To use your vehicle to go to these places and etc. But the business places themselves can come up with creative ways so that they can still have patrons, but maybe not in the way in which they did it before.
In the tourism industry, if you are a taxi driver and the price of diesel or gas goes up by a certain amount, the prices you're charging people to move around, is it the same? Do you get that choice to increase it? And there's another guy increase it by more or less. I think these are going to be some of the issues that come into play because they are going to hit us in the face, and we need to be prepared for it.
I remember it happened years ago with this gas price went up, and you mentioned about the taxi, and most of the taxi guys actually raised the price.
Yes.
And
gas went up and they raised the price?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
No, there was a lot of discussion about that. And as they raised their price, the average consumer who has to travel every single day, they're now paying more, but their wages haven't increased to
wages
deal with
remain
that.
the same.
So the whole ripple effect. So their out-of-pocket spending, or that their disposable income to do other things. I'm saying about to go to a show, to go to a bar, or, can they buy the Kentucky or Subway on a weekend for the whole family? No, or they have to. There's a whole set of impacts, and over the next couple of weeks, we may feel as over there it's not going to affect us. People, it is going to have an impact. It's going to have an impact from a regional point of view, and for that matter, the visitors who come here, are they still going to visit in the numbers that they are? We're going towards the end of the tourism season, but good for Carnival. What is going to be in there? The war may finish, and so there is going to be an effect that goes on for months. And
airline prices would raise.
Exactly, that's what I'm going to say. Airline price is going to go up.
Well, somebody will come and say, Doc, you ain't mentioned this, you ain't mentioned that. I wasn't going to go down into the details.
No, but I actually do. Yeah, I know that you didn't want to do it, but I do think that in a practical sense, little things need to be stated for the average individual to understand, number one, and to be able to put into effect from now on, because you can't wait until an inkling of the feeling has started to come on. It has to happen now, because you have to be proactive.
That is the basis of the commentary I'm making, that I am hoping that entities are gonna be putting simple words together I mean, I mentioned procyclical.
Yeah, and that will just go over some people's heads.
And so forth. But we saw here counter-cyclical before and so forth. As you go ahead. But now people to understand it, what a procyclical, what a counter-cyclical, and those kind of measures. I think it's going to be good public education, and so that will take place.
Okay.
I'm wondering how the government is going to cushion things for Vincent Chance.
Well, you see, as I said,
because this is a new government.
As I said, from a regional point of view, most of our reserves and so are in the central bank, which is linked to the US dollar. That's good at times. I'm not sure what the impact is going to be for lots of other reasons, as you see other countries like Canada and tariffs and other things like that. So would you pull away? Do you change it? It's difficult to say. You know, nothing will probably happen. But so there's the regional OECS point of view, and then nationally, I am pretty sure that the policymakers are thinking hard about this and will be coming up with some strategies of this. They must do. And then within your families, I think that individually, you gotta deal with
and
this.
even for me, before waiting on the government for their policies, etc., as individuals, start trying to put things in place now, right? Just in case, put things in place now, because
yes. Well, that's it.
All right, so it's to say ban your belly.
Ban your belly.
All right, so just in case, we know that expression in Vinci, ban your belly. So yes, just in case. All right, so Doc, thank you for that commentary there. All right, so we are going to head on out. Remember that at around 9:25 thereabouts or 9:30 thereabouts, we'll be back with another commentary segment, but that will be the Talk to Us segment, where you as the listeners get the opportunity to chime in on anything that we discussed for the entire morning. All right, we are heading on out now.
Nothing else sounds as good as
WEFM, the Queen.